Hi, friends. You're welcome to Lawyers Infohub. It's always a pleasure to create content on this platform. If you're a returning subscriber, I thank you for always stopping by to check what is new on the channel. If you're yet to subscribe to the channel, please do consider subscribing to the channel. Join us. It's a great platform where we share not little knowledge that will help you become better. Are you a law student? Are you a young lawyer? Even as an old lawyer, this channel has been and will always be helpful because we talk about issues, legal issues that be of great help to you, to refresh your memory, to help you, grasp those knowledge you need in your day-to-day activities and to advance your work, your career, and your legal journey. So today we're looking at desertion. Desertion is one of those grounds you can bring, use in your petition for dissolution of marriage. Now, when you talk about desertion, what do you mean? When you say that the marriage has broken down irretrievably, maybe where the respondent has deserted the petitioner for a continuous period of at least 1 year, then what you're stating is that there is the separation of one spouse from the other with an intention on the party who is deserting or the deserting spouse, of bringing cohabitation permanently to an end without reasonable cause and without the consent of the other party. What it means is that one person in the marriage has no, you know, has made up his or her mind, left the cohabitation or left the marriage or left the matrimonial home. You know, it's an intention of bringing cohabitation to an end permanently. Not like the person left for a business trip, the person left, for a job outside that location. No, there is an intention that my living is to end cohabitation. That's the most simplest form I can explain it. The person, there's an intention in the heart of the person who is deserting to end cohabitation permanently. Now, when you talk about desertion, there are constituent elements in desertion. When you talk about desertion, where someone is bringing desertion as a ground, the other party or the other lawyer will have to look at this desertion. The element that ought to be in it, is it there? This constitutive element of desertion, can I find it in the facts they have related to claim that there was a desertion? Now, um, these elements include one, what we call de facto separation. De facto separation. Number two is animus disserendi. Number three is lack of just cause for the withdrawal from cohabitation. Lack of just cause for the withdrawal from cohabitation. And the fourth one is absence of the consent of the deserted spouse. Absence of the consent of the deserted spouse. So we have four elements to look out for whenever issue of desertion comes to play. The first one, as I stated earlier, is what the de facto separation. The second one is animus disserendi, and the third one is lack of just cause for the withdrawal from cohabitation, and the fourth one is the absence of the consent of the deserted spouse. Now, when we talk about de facto separation, what do we mean? De facto separation implies the bringing to an end of cohabitation by severing all marital obligations. The most obvious case of desertion occurs, especially maybe just I'm using this as an example, when one spouse physically departs or leaves the matrimonial home. There are other instances of separation too. Now, you see, the spouse who deserted leaves the matrimonial home and cuts off all marital ties in terms of obligations he or she is supposed to give the other party or bring to the marriage. They cut it off. So for there to be de facto separation, the party leaving has an intention. So I told you what desertion is all about. The person is leaving with the mindset of cutting off all marital obligations. Now, don't be confused that there may be de facto separation, but no desertion, where the parties are living apart against their will. For example, one person is in prison. It's not, the will of the other party to stay apart, but because of the circumstances of imprisonment, they are living apart. One of the spouse may get an employment outside the state of where the two of them live together, and the person have to move to another state, a different location from the matrimonial home. You cannot say there is desertion. There is no desertion in this instance. So the factor separation, the idea behind it is the fact that the person is severing all marital obligation. The person physically departs from the matrimonial home and severes all marital obligation. So the second element I spoke about earlier or stated earlier is the animus deserendi. So besides the de facto separation, then animus deserendi is another element in desertion. Now, there must be the intention to withdraw from cohabitation permanently. You have left a spouse have left his matrimonial home. There must be an intention to withdraw from cohabitation permanently. Withdraw from cohabitation permanently. So, animal deserendi is the intention to withdraw from cohabitation permanently. Where there is no such intention, and a spouse maybe temporarily is absent for holiday, business, or for some other reason, then the separation is with what mutual consent. Now, where a spouse voluntarily abandons the matrimonial home, there is a presumption that he has the relevant animus deserendi. So desertion starts from the moment of departure. That is where it starts. Now, where in the course of separation there is a mutual consent where one of the parties form the intention to withdraw permanently from the other, the desertion starts from the moment that intention was formed. Now, we also, um, talked about lack of just cause. Now, there would be no desertion if the spouse who has withdrawn from cohabitation has a good reason for doing so. Now, if, for example, one of the spouse committed adultery or there are other matrimonial misconduct, the other spouse will have a reasonable cause for living apart. You know, now it's important to note that the general principle is that any conduct which makes continuance of matrimonial cohabitation virtually impossible will provide a good excuse for a spouse to desert. Now, a reasonable but mistaken belief by a spouse in the existence of a good cause for separation based on conduct of the other spouse may be a good defense for desertion. Now, the test of reasonable belief that the other spouse has committed a misconduct must be an objective one. When someone states there was a reasonable belief that, for example, this my wife or the respond or the petitioner, you know, committed a matrimonial misconduct, he says it must be the reasonable belief must be an objective one. Absence of consent as the fourth absence of consent as the fourth element. A spouse who leaves the matrimonial home without the consent of the other spouse may be in desertion. If there has been separation by mutual agreement, desertion will supervene once one party withdraws his consent to the state of affairs. If the parties had a mutual consent of, okay, I'm leaving town to move to another place for a job, there was consent in the separation. And later, that person withdraws his or her consent to the state of affairs. I'm no longer in agreement with you for you to move to another state or for you to move to another country. Once one party withdraws that consent to the state of affairs, the previous state of affairs of agreeing for you to stay apart, then desertion can be inferred. Now, a party who consents to a separation cannot be heard to complain about it. The consent given for parties to live apart must be genuine and not obtained by fraud, duress, or misrepresentation. So when someone is claiming, besides there was consent, you must also look at, was the consent obtained by fraud, misrepresentation? Was it obtained by duress? Now, absence of consent on the part of the spouse is different from the spouse's wishes. A wish is different from giving of consent. If there is no consent, there may be desertion, even though the petitioner is pleased to see the respondent go. If there is no consent, there may be what? Desertion, even though the petitioner is pleased that the respondent has left. So these are the things you have to look at when the issue of desertion comes to play. Is there a de facto separation? Is there an animus deserendi? Lack of just cause? Absence of consent? These four elements must be there. Now, before the court will look at and agree that there was indeed desertion, the court also consider that the desertion would have lasted for a continuous period of 1 year immediately preceding the presentation of the petition. So the 1 year rule applies in desertion. In determining whether desertion has been continuous, any one or more periods not exceeding 6 months during the parties resume living with each other in the same household are not regarded as a break. The people are living apart, suddenly you come together again, start living together, you know, those breaks are not to be, counted. So the 1 year should be 1 year straight. Not we live together 3 months. We're living together for 3 months. We came back together for 5 months. Another he moved, somebody separated, a spouse left for another 3 months. You now start counting it disjunctively. No, the 1 year living apart or separation must be full 1 year preceding the presentation of the petition. So I just hope you'll be able to learn something about desertion. Desertion is, many a times, many people want to use desertion as a ground for, but they don't really understand it. They just feel just the person deserted. There are a lot of things you have to consider before you can say, okay, there is desertion. We also have what we call constructive desertion, or desertion with just cause. So that is another topic for another time. But I just want to point out the fact that in desertion, there are four constitutive elements which we have discussed. We've talked about what desertion is all about. We also looked at briefly those elements that must be present when you talk about desertion, and the fact that the period must be at least 1 year preceding the date of what? The presentation of the petition. The court also looks at that. The 1 year rule is very important. It must also satisfy, the court must be satisfied that if the 1 year there was no distortion in the 1 year. So friends, if you have any question, please drop them. If you have something to add to, can drop it at the comment. We also receive criticisms. We believe in constructive criticisms. So if you have any, you can also drop it. We also, because when we receive criticism, we work on it. If it's a positive, if it's positive or negative, either way, we look at it and see what we can do with it. So friends, thank you for listening. If you're yet to subscribe to the channel again, please do consider subscribing to the channel. We have hundreds of contents on the channel that will be beneficial to you. So we just do hope that you take your time and go through the channel and look at the one that interests you, that fascinates you, watch them, make your input, and also learn, which is what the key, the core of why the channel is in existence. Thank you.